Welcome, everybody. Sorry for the delay. There was a little bit of a technical difficulty. I'm going to share my screen. My screen is being shared to a Word document that I prepared for everybody. This class is going to be based on some of the classes that we've had previously. So I do apologize if some people might feel a little bit lost. I'm going to do my best to explain everything as clearly and concisely as possible. Just a brief summary of what we did on previous classes and what the purpose of this class is going to be about. We learned two concepts. The concept that we learned, number one, when talking about bread, is that different types of bread, quote unquote, can be mezonot, even though it's made with wheat. We said three different categories that will become mezonot. Category number one, if it is crispy like a cracker or like a cookie, that, even though it's made with wheat, it's automatically going to be mezonot. Number two is it creates a pocket with sweets that are inside it, honey, fruit, nuts, those types of things are going to be mezonot, a pocket. And thirdly, if kneaded into the dough actually are things that are sweet, apple juice, an excessive amount of sugar, an excessive amount of eggs. Those are where you can taste the item and taste the sweetness. That's going to be mezonot. So we actually closed out with saying how most egg challah rolls are actually mezonot, and people need to be careful, especially when they're making challah that they want on Friday night, that they want to say hamotzion. You need to use minimal sugar and minimal eggs. Doesn't mean you can't use any. You can use 3-4 eggs, but again, you have to make sure that you're not able to taste the actual egg. Now, based off of that, we decided to go into a shiur on Ezekiel bread. So it's sort of its own topic, and I'm going to ask everybody to tune in next week where we start to really delve into these issues in more depth. But what we are doing is we are going to now be seeing what is the deal with another type of bread, which may not have the beracha of hamotzi because of another reason. And that's not necessarily because of the three reasons that we mentioned. Crispy like a cracker, has a pocket, or things are kneaded into the dough, but an entirely different reason altogether. So I'm going to start now. So the introduction to this class is about Ezekiel bread, but we are going to then, I'm using it as the opportunity to talk about other common items from all walks, right? From fruits. I'm going to do Ezekiel bread. I'm going to do fruits and cereals that have misconceptions as to what the beracha is. So I'm going to give this very brief introduction first. When it comes to bread, there is a concept brought down in Shulchan Aruch, it's also brought down in the Gemara, that in order for something to be considered a bread, it must have dough. Okay? It must be something that has dough. So what would be an example of something, let's say, that would not have any dough attached to it? So let's take something like let's say like puffed wheat. Okay, so it's wheat. It'll come out into, let's say, like a cracker form, or sometimes even, let's say, like a little bit of a cakey format. But it's not going to be ever considered bread because it never came out as a dough and it was never baked. Instead, it was puffed. Similarly, a more common example is pasta. Pasta is made of wheat. It's almost the same ingredients as bread. But since you don't make pasta into a dough, you don't bake it, so therefore that is not going to be hamotzi lechamin haaretz. Okay, it's not going to be that. So what do we have to then say? We have to say that there are certain things that, even though the ingredients are wheat based, so there's a chance that either it could be mezonot or it could be something like adama. Now, why? Let's go. The second part is going to be a little bit confusing for some people. Why adama? So back then, how many of you like, let's say, sunflower seeds or bizid, right? Like a lot of people like this. back then they didn't really have, David sunflower seeds, or let's say like a sun pumpkin seed community. What they used to do, they had a lot of access to wheat. People would actually chew wheat kernels. That would be like they would chew on a wheat kernel. So what would be the beracha if I chewed on a wheat kernel? Do I say mezonot? I think we could all agree you don't say hamotzi because you're not making it into a dough. So the wheat kernels actually grow from the ground. If you're just taking raw wheat kernels, so the beracha is, and you're chewing them, the beracha is going to be adama. So that's where we get that concept from, meaning at the end of the day, the kernels of wheat are still things that grow from the ground. So since they grow from the ground and they're not treated in any way in terms of like a regular bread, meaning that they're not cooked, they're not boiled, they're not done, they're not baked, they're not in none of those processes are used. Therefore, a regular wheat kernel would retain its status as adama. I'm going to use that now. Now let's go into Ezekiel bread. So what is Ezekiel bread? First of all, you should just know, it's a little weird. I don't know how many people, catch on to this. It's called Ezekiel bread because of our Navi Yehezkel. But in Yehezkel, it's Perek Daled, Pasuk Tet. It's where he talks about all of these different grains. But he says wheat, barley, oats. Then he even says millet, legumes. A lot of different products are mixed all together. And Hashem instructs him to make bread out of these items. It's a very sad context because Yehezkel is going to be in mourning and try to show the Bnei Israel how what they're doing is wrong, and it's going to lead to mourning. How does somebody make good, nice bread where out of simcha? You separate it. It's a bread all of wheat or bread all of oats, and you don't just glob everything together where when you bake it, the bread is going to become speckled from all of the different types of wheat. That's not what you do. So Hashem tells Yehezkel, no, for you right now, this is what I want you to do. Take this. It's a negative connotation of this bread, Ezekiel bread. However, the people who made or came up with Ezekiel bread, they said, look, by doing certain things to this bread and adding other things like legumes and seeds to this bread, you're going to do two things. You're going to lower the amount of gluten that's going to be in this bread, and you're going to lower the amount of wheat and processed grain that's going to be in this bread as well. So it's considered very healthy because of those reasons. A, the mixture. B, the process. The process is very important for us. What is the key problem? Why is this such an issue? The biggest issue is because if you look on the back of the ingredients of Ezekiel bread, it's made from sprouted wheat. What is sprouted wheat? Sprouted wheat is basically soaked wheat. They take it, they soak it, and when they soak it, it starts to decompose. Actually, the kernel, and as it's sprouting, it's almost losing its name of being a wheat kernel, and now it's becoming something that is more of let's say like a leaf or something that grows from the ground. This sprouting process, then it becomes so soft that now they group these sprouts together, and that's what they bake. So at that point, who's bold enough to say, if it's just sprouted wheat, what beracha do you think you would say? Anybody want to? Let's go. There we go. Margie, our resident the class answerer. What do you say? What do you say, Razi? What do you say, Margie?
Sorry, it's my mom.
I know, I'm kidding.
I would say adama based on what you said about the kernels.
Right, good, excellent. And many people do say adama on Ezekiel bread. And actually, some Ashkenazim, they say that the kernels have degenerated so much that, and if you look at Star K website, if you look at if you just typed in what's the beracha on Ezekiel bread, many Ashkenazim will say shakol. Shakol, because of this concept that the seed has degenerated so much that it's not even something that's necessarily considered very edible. So in that case, they would say shakol. I'm leaning to what Margie was saying, that based on that, it would be Adama. I want to share with you, I'm going to share my screen now. And this is an excerpt. So I put this together. I'm going to send in the chat, guys, this document that I gave you that I'm so that you can reference it. So I'm going to read a little quickly, but you can always review. So let me share the screen. So when it comes to Ezekiel bread, first of all, let's give me a thumbs up or a virtual thumbs up if you guys can see the document. Good. Okay. So let's go to Ezekiel bread. This is from the Star K's website. Okay. So let's read. So Ezekiel bread, let me just, you know what? Let me just, if I zoom in, wait, more, little more. For those of us who are close to 40. Okay, there we go. Very good. Okay, is that better, guys? Okay, give me like a little thumbs up. Okay, there we go. So now Ezekiel bread, this is from the website. So due to its alleged health benefits, again, there's like this old, like it's very, there's like a very snide tone to like alleged health benefits. I don't know. People are like a little against it. Bread made from these ingredients has recently become popular as the bread contains some of the 5 types of grains. The beracha for this bread is hamotzi. So let's say why. We just said that it's sprouting together. So these breads are produced by taking whole wheat berries and soaking them in water until they sprout and begin to grow. That's as we said, right? This is what I wanted to underline. The sprouts are then ground into dough. It's not a flour. That we're skipping a step. We're skipping the step of flour, and we're just going to take these sprouts, crush them, and that's the dough. Because of that, some have suggested that as the kernel starts to decompose in the sprouting process, it loses its status of wheat. According to this, why am I underlining that? Because even the Star K is acknowledging, because there are many poskim who are going to say Adama or Shakol. This, therefore, it's not written so well. Therefore is really going back on the previous sentence that we said about Hamotzi. It says, therefore, bread made from the resulting dough is not Hamotzi. Others dispute this and maintain that the bracha remains Hamotzi. Rav Heinemann, which is a very big gadol, feels that a portion of the regular wheat kernel typically remains in sprouted wheat, and sprouted wheat does not lose the status of wheat. Therefore, the beracha on sprouted grain bread is hamotzi. So just from the Star K website, and before I go to the OU and Rabbi Belsky, who does it a little bit clearer, what we see here is that since a type of dough is actually being created, it would become hamotzi, but that's not enough. Really, the chidush here that Rav Heinemann is saying is that there is still a little piece of the wheat kernel that remains as wheat, meaning the sprouting process does not totally change it into a seed where now a plant is coming out of it. There's still a small amount that really retains the composition of wheat and the wheat kernel, and therefore it becomes hamotzi. I'm going to read Rabbi Belsky, and then we are going to talk it out and answer questions. So this is from the OU's website, right? Rabbi Belsky, also huge gadol here in America, and expert in kashrut. So Rabbi Belsky said the following, right? When he again, this was which year was it? This was pulled. I think this quote was 2011. So Rabbi Belsky, right, Alav Shalom, explained that there is no specific requirement to use flour for bread to be obligated in hafrashat challah. He's talking about, this is an excerpt from, let's say I'm baking Ezekiel bread. Do I take out a piece of challah? So many people made the argument that they said, Rabbi, where's the flour? It's not really, as we spoke about in our previous classes, the shape of bread, the action of bread. This is not, so why should I take out challah? He says, and he clarifies this, it's from the Tur also, that there's never a requirement to have actual flour. But read this next line. What is necessary is that the kernels stick together through a kneading process called gibul. Gibul means a glob, a globule, a piece of dough. Gibul means, literally translated, is to knead, K-N-E-A-D, to knead something together. So look at the chidush that he's going to say. Since the kernels are soft and adhere to each other and form dough, this dough is obligated in challah, By the same token, Rav Belsky ruled that the beracha on sprouted wheat bread is hamotzi. So he's teaching two halachot at the same time. One, because let's say you took sprouted wheat and it became so soft, and now you're going to make it into a globule and use gibul and knead it together. That's enough to do two things. A, if you baked
Hey, Adam, and how are you?
Good, how are you?
Okay. We're going to have to ask to mute.
That was a long line.
Yeah, it was a long line. Crazy.
Oh my God, I'm on loud. Oh,
There you go, Miss.
sorry.
Thank you. All right, sorry. Let's go back. So, what do we say? So we say two halachot are now totas. What are totas? Number one, you would have to take out hafrashat challah from this glob, and then it would also be hamotzi. Now let's pay attention to the underlined part. Often, sprouted grain bread contains additional ingredients. This is very important. If you look at, in my house, my wife likes to get those, the Ezekiel bread English muffins. So if you look at that, there are sometimes not just sprouted wheat, it'll also have a small portion of wheat, actual wheat. Now, the whole mixture is not just from sprouted wheat. So often, sprouted grain bread contains additional ingredients other than wheat or other four grains, such as lentils, corn, and beans. Fine. If this is the case, one should be careful to eat a larger slice of bread that contains at least a kezayit from the five grains to recite Birkat HaMazon. So that's interesting, but I want to focus on the next part. However, if the majority of bread was made from the five grains, the Mishnah Berurah implies that the entire bread takes on the status of the majority. In that case, so long as one eats a kezayit, Birkat HaMazon is recited. So two things. It doesn't write this here, but I was adding that piece, sorry. So if there's other wheat inside of it, inside of the Ezekiel bread as well, so then for sure it's going to be either hamotzi or some people want to say mizonot to stay out of the safek, but it's not. That's going to rule out for us adama. Because anytime one of the five grains is in our mixture and it's there for taste, then it's automatically going to be either mizonot or hamotzi if it's a bread. Let's take an example. How many people like ice cream, right? Ice cream sandwich, right? What's the beracha on ice cream sandwich, right? We talk about this for years. I think Elizabeth is here. I think I remember having this conversation with her, like in Camp David when they served the chip witches. I don't know if Elizabeth remembers that, but I'm thinking now, right?
I do remember that conversation. It sounds very familiar.
Does you remember that? It was crazy.
Yes.
Right. So now I'm thinking about it, right? But why? I'm just having it to have ice cream. Why would the beracha be mezonot? The answer, the reason why it would be mezonot is because the mezonot is there for taste. You're still tasting it. It's good. It's not there just to hold the ice cream in place. An ice cream cone that you're not going to eat the cone, then you say shakol. And if you get pieces of cone in, who cares? Here, what's happening is two things in the end of this Rabbi Belsky excerpt from the OU. Is number one, it's telling us if it's mixed with anything else, there's an even greater reason why to say hamotzi. And if there's, what then, how much of it do I have to eat in order to say Birkat HaMazon? Because Ezekiel bread is not, when I eat a halal, pita bread, I'm eating 100% bread. So it's very easy. You eat the 1 ounce of whatever you're eating and you're done. That's how Mishnah Berurah says. Mishnah Berurah says whatever the beracha is, then that's what you do. Then you don't have to worry about eating an extra slice or whatnot. But since there are a lot of other things that are added into the Ezekiel bread, so then what would you say? You would maybe say ala mechya at the end and not Birkat HaMazon, unless you ate like 2-3 slices and got enough wheat in there because they're mixing it with so many other things. We follow also this Mishnah Berurah, and we do say that you don't have to trouble yourself to eat, 4 slices of Ezekiel bread in order to say Birkat HaMazon. And instead, what you can do is you would say hamotzi. I had a conversation with Rabbi Aluf and also Rabbi Jack Savdi, also because we were talking about this before recently, and it seems through conversation that Rabbi Aluf was also agreeing with this position to try to say hamotzi on Ezekiel bread. Now, let's just also understand, just because something is made from Ezekiel bread, it may not be hamotzi. What do I mean? Let's say something was mixed together we're trying to say sprouted wheat. Is it wheat? We're counting it as wheat now, based on what we said. However, let's say before they made this gibul, they made this mix. What did they do? They added high fructose corn syrup. They added a lot of sugar, and now it tastes sweet. What would the beracha be? In that case, it would be mezonot. So on processed foods, even like those English muffins, or let's say an Ezekiel wrap. So it's made from Ezekiel bread, but if it's also added into it, would be, let's say, sugar, corn syrup, etc. In that case, what would happen? It would be mezonot, but not because Ezekiel bread is mezonot, but because of our standard rules apply to regular wheat as would apply to sprouted wheat. And if you mix the dough before you bake it with sugar and enough that you'll taste it and it's sweet, it would be mezonot. Okay, I'm going to stop the screen share for a second. I'm going to take a breath. And who would like to ask a question on this? The world is yours.
Hi, Rabbi. It's Gabby.
Hi, Gabby. What's going on?
What's doing? Okay, so the end result is we would say hamotzi, but we would say ala mechia.
So according to the Ashkenazim, they would just say hamotzi, but you have to make sure that you eat enough Ezekiel bread that you're having at least a kazayit of the grain, because of the wheat. Because if you look at the ingredients in Ezekiel bread, it's mixed with a lot of other things. So the only time you say Birkat Hamazon is if you ingest a kazayit of wheat. I don't think you have to worry about this so much because you have the Mishnah Berurah to rely upon. Mishnah Berurah says once we've established that the Berachah Rishona is Hamotzi, then the whole thing counts towards your bread intake, and you'll just say Birkat Hamazon. So once we're watching, I'm gonna say follow like the Mishnah Berurah, and we're gonna say Hamotzi.
So now,
sorry.
Is the same like for Ezekiel wraps?
So again, yes, but again, each wrap adds their own ingredients. Again, if the third ingredient is high fructose corn syrup, that means that it's an essential ingredient, and therefore, and if you taste the sweetness, then it'll be mezonot. Just like remember I said in last week's class, I don't know who was here, but you know those Arnold's rolls like for the barbecue, you know those buns that people eat, let's say with hamburgers and hot dogs. So in those cases, like those are very sweet. I say mezonot on those. I do not wash on those. They're like cake. That's why you love them so much, right? So I
Thank you, Rabbi.
Right. Okay. Wait. Rini Tawil looks like she wants to say something. Let's go to Rini.
Yeah. No, I had a question. So like one part it said like, I don't know if it was because of Ezekiel has greens that if you make it into a dough or something like that. But my question was like, let's say with like cauliflower crust or like other things that you're making into a imitation dough, is that also like in the category of like maybe hamotzi, maybe not?
That's a great question. But the reason why it wouldn't be, let's say cauliflower pizza would be adama because the entire crust is adama. Here we're trying to say now, if the rabbis did rule and say the question is, Rini, what is sprouted wheat? Is sprouted wheat shakol? The people that say it's shakol, they're saying that the kernel it's not a kernel anymore. The rabbis that are saying that it's adama are going to say, look, it degenerates, but not into nothing, that it's shakol, so it's still a seed from the ground, say adama. Others are going to say that it's really hamotzi because it's still wheat and still maintains some of its status. If you made a crust from something like that, let's say you made sprouted wheat pizza crust, so then we'd have the same issue. In that case, since it's from wheat, and it's put together, these opinions would say hamotzi. In your cauliflower case, it's all adama. There's no argument. So we would say adama.
Thank you.
Rabbi, I have a question about last week's class.
Yeah, sure. One second. I'm just going because I'm like, this is okay. Elizabeth. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So most of the bread nowadays in the supermarkets, they all say no high fructose corn syrup, and if you don't see that anymore, like is there anything to rely on to say mizonot at that point, like other weird ingredients, or is it still considered hamotzi if there's no added sugar?
That's a great question. If it says no added sugar, so high fructose corn syrup is just sugar. It's just the easiest and cheapest form that they're able to get. So it's that they get it from corn. So if it has sugar, even though there's no high fructose corn syrup, because that's very chemical, like it's the high fructose corn syrup is unhealthy because it's such a chemical.
Right.
So it's becoming it, and the process to make it is not so healthy. To use regular sugar is still going to give you the sweetness, but it's just no high fructose corn syrup. So you have to check. In theory, you're right. If there's nothing added at all, then you have to say hamotzi. Like a lot of the whole wheat breads, even though like a whole wheat bread versus a white bread, that white bread, it's like you press it down, it doesn't come back up. It's like cake. It's like the sugar is bonding it. That's how white it is. But like the whole wheat breads really have almost nothing added, or it's very far down on the list. So on, let's say like whole wheat breads, I'm gonna wash on that. If it's a white bread or if it's something that you still look at it and it still has a lot of sugar in it. That's from what I know. If the product says nothing added and it's like a health bread, then yeah, you got to say hamotzi. The best thing is to taste it and say, does it taste like bread? That's the biggest thing.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, Mrs. Sain, go, kavod.
Last week you talked about challis and French toast.
Yeah, that was a good question.
Okay, you cut it up small. You said you can use it. I wanted to give my son stuffing. He said if you had intended to make it as for chali, for beracha, it would still be hamotzi. What do you think?
So again, let's just review for the people who aren't here. So if I'm starting with a bread that was actually hamotzi, now when I cut it into slices, even if I fry it, if they're large slices, it always stays hamotzi no matter what. I would say that for the stuffing, let's say for the turkey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say it was cut. Now, if it's one glob, right, it's more than a kazayit, then I would agree with him and I would wash for it. If it was, let's say, in croutons form, like say each one was very, very, very tiny, then in that case it would be mezonot. If you cooked it to the point where you put so many spices and a lot of flavoring, and you also, let's say, fried it when they were in very small pieces, then I would agree and be mezonot. So I think, Odette, you should send us all a little sample of your stuff. So that
No, I wanted to know because I make it into small pieces, then it becomes into a pie. But he said because I intended to use it for Shabbat, you have to keep it for that intention. I never heard of that.
I think what he means is what we said. About once you bake it as a bread, it has its status. If you bake a bread with the intention of slicing it up into croutons, it's always going to be mezonot. But if you bake bread and you used it as bread, and then you want to say, hey, this leftover bread, I can turn it into something,
Right.
it has to be small pieces and not a pie, like you would say. And then I would say mezonot.
Thank you.
You got it.
Understood.
Margie, what do we got?
Yeah, so my question was, you know how one of the three things is if there's something mixed into the dough, it becomes mezonot?
Yes, correct.
Is that only something sweet? Because here it looks like there's other things mixed in, like lentils, beans.
Right, so it's only good. So it's only something sweet. Remember we said sambusak, anything that you eat with bread, let's say like meat in a pocket, cheese in a pocket.
So that's kisni. That's a pocket. I'm not talking about, isn't another one there's something mixed into the dough.
Right, so it has to be something sweet and something that you can taste the difference.
Okay.
So, with the legumes, again, why some people would also say adama, only thing that changes that, and why the only reason why you would maybe say mezonot is that you would say that the wheat is there for taste. But once it's regular hamotzi wheat, you have to jump all the way to hamotzi. Is that clear or no?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, Lori, do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
So hi, Rabbi, first. I have a question. So even like with the like the all different flavors, Ezekiel?
So that's a good question. If it's needed into, let's say there's cinnamon raisin.
Right, cinnamon raisin's another story, no?
Well, but that's a good point. We'll use that. If it's cinnamon raisin Ezekiel bread, and it's kneaded into the dough, then it's the same exact thing as as if I have a cinnamon raisin bagel. Cinnamon raisin bagel is wheat, regular wheat, not sprouted, but since kneaded into the dough before baking it, it's so sweet and sugary, it's going to be mizonot.
Right. But no, but I'm talking about like, you know how they have like the other ones with like all the seeds, like some funky seeds in it and all that?
I don't know exactly. Maybe send me a text or something that I can see, but usually, unless the seeds are, let's say, like something like a heavy spice, like a rosemary, like I don't think that's a spice.
No, not like that. Like,
I can say if it's poppy seeds or any of that, then that's just they're putting seeds in it. It's still going to be hamotzi.
Right. Right. No, like they have one with like all like a multi-seed, I think it's called, like a sunflower seed, like
Right.
3 or 4 seeds. I think it's the yellow one or something. That's still hamotzi.
Yeah. Again, I'm gonna have to see if again, there are certain seeds that give off such a pungent taste that maybe we could do it, but I have to look at it like a coriander or something like that. But I don't know. I'd have to. The only one I know of is cinnamon raisin, which I would.
Rabbi, this class changed a lot of things here for me.
That's what I'm all about. Putting myself on people's hit lists. But that's
But hello, wait till Eddie calls you tonight.
There you go. Listen,
Thank you, Rabbi.
I'm trying to source it as well.
No.
Everybody knows that whenever I give a halakha class, I'm giving as maximum sources as possible. I'm not claiming that this is my opinion. I'm giving you the sources. I gave you Rabbi Belsky. I gave you Rabbi Heinemann. You know, those are Gedolei Torah that are in the world of berachot. I mentioned to you that I ran it by Rabbi Aluf, and he did say that
I love it.
he agreed. So, I mean, look, if the standard rules could apply. If anything that's wheat-based, if you said mezonot or you said adama, you would still be covered, right? What we're trying to be as accurate as possible and do the right thing and not get into any questions of berachash levatala and atzricha. And so you know, it's confusing. This is not an easy issue is my point. I'm not trying to say that. Okay.
Could you send this recorded video? How do I get it?
So yes, I'll put you. I usually get the recording from SCA. They upload it in like it takes 2-3 days. Sometimes I get it over the weekend, and I send it to all the girls in the chat. I'll put you in the chat. No problem.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, sure.
Shabbat shalom.
Okay. Any other questions? We're not gonna have time to do the rest of the sheet. I know I went a little over because we had a little technical difficulties. But next week we'll continue with more of the svekot, more controversial topics in berachot.
Rabbi, I have a quick question.
Yeah. Anybody who needs to log off, feel free, but we'll answer Rochelle's question. Yes, Rochelle.
Okay, so this is more about challah, but first, like how much flour do you have to do to like do
You need a 5-pound bag of flour, which comes out to almost exactly 44 that seem.
So let's say I do half the bag, then I don't have to do half rasha.
Correct.
And then let's say I'm making the challah with the intention not to use it for actual challah, but to make it for like pizza or cinnamon buns or something.
Pizza and cinnamon buns would also probably, depends how you make it. The pizza for sure, hamotzi. The cinnamon bun, it would depend how much you need into the dough. If you're putting cinnamon and sugar in the dough before you bake it, then it's mezonot.
And do you do have rasha on that? If it's like a challah recipe?
So if it's a challah recipe and you did the full bag and you're first making it into challah, then yes.
Let's say I'm not making it into challah, like I just like how it comes out.
Right. No, what I'm saying. Once you're playing with flour and water dough, once you make the full dough, then you need to take out challah.
Anytime, not just for challah?
Again, I'm saying, but what you're really doing is you're making challah, but it's not. When you say I'm not making it for challah, you're saying I'm not going to use it on Shabbat as my 2 halot, but you're still making bread.
Right.
You understand? You're still making bread. So anytime bread is made with that measurement, you have to take out the challah.
Okay.
Okay, but do the whole bag then. Do the whole bag and freeze it. I always tell people if you're going to do that, I think it's easier that way anyway. I think you do the whole bag. If you're doing half a bag each week, do the whole bag and freeze it. No?
Yeah. Honestly, it still
Get
stays
the
so
mitzvah.
fresh. Yeah.
Get the mitzvah, Rochelle. We don't cut corners, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Awesome.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, great. Anybody else, or we're good? Okay, looks like we're good. Did I see somebody else unmute? No.
I unmuted to say thank you.
Oh, okay, sure.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Hey, bye, guys. Take care. We'll see you next week, Bezat Hashem.
Thank you, Rabbi. Send
You got
regards to Carol. Tell her I miss her.
I will,
Thank
for
you
sure,
so much.
Elizabeth.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Bye.